Welcome to Flyover. Today's guest has degrees from Case Western Reserve University, the University of Florida, and SUNY Buffalo. His impressive career includes academic positions at Oklahoma State University, the University of Buffalo, and Bowie State University. Please welcome Dr. John Shook. So, growing up in Buffalo, tell me a little bit about it. Was there anything in there that from the area, from your upbringing there, that pushed you to pursue an academic career?
Oh, I doubt it. My parents were a big influence. They always had a house full of books, and so growing up, I could read my mom's collection. She was into science fiction and science, and my father was into history and culture and the world and politics and that sort of thing. So by the time I hit college, I'd already sort of grown up in a house with a miniature college library in it. So I just never slowed down.
It's nice. When they weren't reading, what did your parents do?
Very, very middle class activities. I remember being outdoors a lot.
Yeah. What they do for a living?
Well, my father worked for a title guarantee company. So when you buy a house, you have to buy title insurance, and he worked for that, which suited him perfectly. He liked maps and records, and he had to track back the history of most of the land in his county and a couple others. So that was I suppose the perfect occupation for the way his mind worked. And my mom was a homemaker. Later on in life, she taught herself how to run all the whiz bang software on them newfangled computers you may have heard of. Well, I guess they caught on, never went anywhere. But at any rate, she had her own very satisfactory little career going, helping out with with another insurance company, as it turns out.
It says I actually recently took part in buying a house for the first time ever with my wife because most of my life I was um, a silly bachelor, so I never really got around to doing anything like that. So going through the process with her for the first time, and she had done it before, so she's like, "Okay, we're gonna do this, this, and this." And in my head, I'm like, "Oh, that's an insane amount of stuff to do." But yeah, it turns out that she was right, and there's all the title insurance and everything like that, and it was a lot. So your old man was busy. What made you decide to go to college? Was it because you said they were very middle class and they just kind of read? Did they?
Well, my dad had gone to college. Then my mother went to it. Sort of got her her associate's degree later on. It was just sort of assumed.
Hmm.
Me and my brother were going to head off to college, and it was only a question of which one. So I picked one that was a safe distance away down in Cleveland. Not so close. My parents could show up unannounced. You know how it is. And thought I was going to do just math and science.
That's I often tell like high school age students when I'm talking to them is like when you pick your college, it's nice to be like, let's say 3 to 5 hours away because like with 3 to 5 hours, you can get home whenever you need to. Your parents can come see you whenever they need to, but it's just far enough away that you're just not gonna like you're just not gonna do it every weekend. So your parents won't be coming to bug you. You won't be coming home. It's a good range. But Cleveland from Buffalo's that's a haul.
Oh no, it's about 3.5 hours.
Really?
Oh yeah, I joined a fraternity, and for a lark, we would decide we wanted buffalo chicken wings, load into the car, dash up to the south towns over the state line, and dash back and get back by 3 a.m. It can be done.
Well, I'm feeling extremely inadequate about I guess my Great Lakes geography. Huh? So I guess you would just kind of follow, yeah, a couple rivers, a lake, you're there.
There it
Uh,
is. That's it.
what school in Cleveland?
Case Western Reserve University. Yeah.
Classic school, been around for a long time.
Yeah, and I could have ended up in, science, but I love math, and then it was perhaps a little too easy for me. I was taking graduate courses by my sophomore year. I wanted to know what numbers were. I think a helpful professor said, "Go to the philosophy department," and the rest is history.
I blame your parents for all those books they forced on you. Yeah.
That was a good influence.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, I always find that again, talking to young students, about courses that they might be interested in, and what they should take, um, or their schedule's full and they don't have time for a lot of philosophy courses. If they ask me like what's a course or what are a couple courses I should take, uh, I want to lead them to courses that will help them be critical of their thought, and help them to see mistaken thinking and fallacies, and there's basically two ways to do that. One is logic courses, which it sounds like you're talking about here, which are almost word math, at a level. They're very like structured, and this follows this, and um, sometimes it feels like it's closer to geometry, than it is to language. But then the other courses, sort of the practical reasoning courses where you learn about informal reasoning, and I think that that's probably a better choice for most students. I'm assuming we could fight about that, but it seems for you, coming from the mathematical background, that logic was the way that got you in.
Well, I'd been reading a lot of philosophy in high school. I was into Asian philosophy, in 10th grade. So I was prepared for bigger questions. I wasn't prepared for the bigger answers. I I remember the first logic class I ever took. I saw a truth table and I was like, yeah, I can handle this. Um, I don't remember taking an intro to philosophy class. I probably skipped it. I remember taking ancient philosophy, and it started with the pre-Socratics. So I'm like, being, non-being, the truth, I'm like, oh yeah, I need more Parmenides and Heraclitus, and then yeah, you get to this Plato fella. But it was just discovering the ultimate questions, and hearing about possible answers that go off the menu sometimes with the ebb and flow of civilizations. I was hooked.
Well, it had to be a pretty big hook, right? Because you started, with sort of a math and science leaning, which has career perspectives, and it seems like you veered away from them to have an unholy life of philosophical pursuit. Like not only like not always the something I can attest to right now with my own personal situation, but it's not always the easiest way to find gainful employ.
Well, I wouldn't recommend philosophy as a career to just anybody. It sort of depends on what's that itch that you just can't stop scratching intellectually. If I get a chance to advise students, I want them to take a class that they just can't stop thinking about. And if they get into it for some reason, keeps them awake at night, I'm like, yeah, you need to take more of that. Don't worry where it leads. But if it pulls you in, there'll be a career at the end of it because you'll love doing it.
Yeah, well said. Is there ever been a philosophy class that you've taken that you regretted taking as a student?
Well, I had a very good opportunity at a great education. There are courses I regret not taking.
Hmm.
because maybe there was a scheduling conflict, or I just thought, oh, I'll catch up later. And then I look back after graduation, after getting my PhD, and thinking, oh, I'm such an idiot. I never ended up taking a course with this professor or that professor that I know would have, blown my mind. And you can try to do it secondarily on your own, but there's nothing quite like being in a class with other students, exploring something. So it's more the road not taken. And I can comfort myself and say, well, I can get the books and read them for myself. And, I've covered a lot of territory. Self-learning is pretty good too, but I know there are courses, a couple of courses I've sat through, not so much wishing I hadn't taken it. It was, things I needed in my arsenal. But I sat through the entire semester thinking, that's false, that's wrong, that's mistaken. Oh, there's got to be a better philosophy for that. That's hot garbage. Analytic philosophy very often triggered me like that. I've sat in a lot of classes wasting my time about philosophy of language or epistemology. It was a great relief to find pragmatism. It suited me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we all have our favorites. The only one that ever just killed me, and it was the only philosophy course that I ever dropped. It was a graduate level course on causation.
Okay.
And my brain simultaneously had trouble grasping it and the ability to care. Like I just cannot get into it. I know a couple of years ago, I think I was the VP of the Virginia Philosophical Association at the moment. We were reviewing submissions, and I was pretty open about like any ones they wanted me to review. That's fine. We were trying to divvy them up evenly, and one of them I misread the title, and as soon as I started reading it, I realized that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be about, and it was a causation philosopher explaining something, and I was like, okay, I'll do it, and but my like I just like a paragraph in, my eyes are crossing over, and by the transit of power, I want to get out of here, and I emailed a couple other guys on the committee. I'm like, somebody please do me a solid and exchange um, you know a submission with me for review, because this person needs a better reviewer than me. But I just causation is beyond me, and it's the one class I was just like, I will see you. And the professor was perfectly lovely. Like he was a wonderful guy, and he was passionate about what he taught. But for me, it just didn't work. But you get the philosophy academic hook in you at Case Western, and then where are you off to after that?
I did my master's in Florida and then circled back to the University of Buffalo, SUNY, for my PhD, a little bit of a homecoming, but they offered me a great deal, scholarship, and coming home. That was nice. And they had a very pluralistic department. You could take classes in anything from Japanese philosophy to medieval philosophy to any contemporary topic. And there was one professor who did pragmatism that suited me, and so it was a very very comfortable home for me.
So if we had somebody watching that didn't know what pragmatism is, do you have like an elevator pitch?
Yeah, well, pragmatism to this day is America's only homegrown academic philosophy. And in fact, if you want indigenous philosophy, you can't do better than studying North American indigenous, Native American Indian ways of thought as well. Not that there's much overlap, but at any rate, it's homegrown. And pragmatism has been enormously influential since Darwin. In many ways, it's what happens if you take evolution seriously about everything. So anything static, formal, permanent, fixed, a priori, no, these are just hinges. They may not be moving while you're using them, but you can put them somewhere else and get somewhere else. So it's very helpful for thinking, for example, about science. In other words, science is a discipline that sort of has to make up its own methodological rules as it goes along. Now, that means science can get philosophical, as it does, as Einstein did, for example, worrying about how can we prove what simultaneous means so that our instruments are telling us something. And voila, you get relativity. So philosophy and science can work much better together under a pragmatist interpretation, in my view. And lots of other fields work very well, especially anthropology, sociology, psychology, health sciences. They're already pragmatist. They need theories that work. So it's a very flexible philosophy.
Excellent. So you knock out your PhD, you are then looking for a job. What comes along?
I was lucky. A job came to me. A small college was recruiting. They went to the biggest university in that part of the state and said, I don't know, you got any, you know, all but dissertation folks. And they gave me a tryout, and I must have done well enough. Finished my dissertation while I was teaching a 5-5 load at a small college, and never looked back. The profession decided I was going to work out. Well, I loved teaching. I'd always loved it. So it was a calling for me.
Yeah. So where have you been able to engage um, using philosophy outside of the classroom?
Yeah, well, I try to live a philosophical life. It's handy when times are rough, when you run into some big questions. And bigger questions only get bigger the closer you are to your mortality. Not that I'm eager for that, but it's also useful for having a bigger perspective on things. We can get bound up in the headlines. We can social media cycle of, herky jerky attention grabbing. So being philosophical, whether one is philosophical coming out of the social sciences or the humanities or even the health or natural sciences, if you're a little philosophical, you're capable of stepping back and seeing the big rhythms, the big cycles, the big pictures where you realize, okay, these are probably just phases that we're going through. Now keep up, the tide is moving, but it gives you an enormous advantage of perspective. You feel a little bit better. You're able to track genealogies into the past. Why is this happening this way? Well, there's been a few factors a long time coming, and a philosophical person is already acquainted with them or can figure them out. And then it feels a little bit better about the future. Now, the future could look gloomy. Philosophy is not something that'll always turn you into a rosy-eyed optimist. But it means you don't have to be trapped in cynicism either. You can sort of see where the tides are going and try to be on the right side of things and be part of, socially progressive or politically helpful movements to the extent that one is interested in doing so. But at any rate, the newspapers aren't so surprising after a while when you have a bigger perspective on how decades go by and centuries go by and cultures and civilizations come and go.
Yeah, it's a lot of things are quite competitive. I was listening to just randomly a song earlier today that basically summed up the last election cycle and the last several years, really. And people are complaining about like oversimplified, foul language, people in the dating pool looking for the wrong things in people, uh, people not having any moral fiber anymore. It like in the song, like just summed everything up. And but it was Anything Goes by Cole Porter, which was 90 years ago. So people really, in a lot of ways, we often are just talking about the same thing. It's not always. People always want to believe it's the tearing asunder of civilization, but a lot of it just really is civilization. What we do and what we engage in.
Oh, sure. There are rhythmic pulses. History never quite repeats, but it does rhyme. Cole Porter, right? He was coming of age during the roaring 20s and then the difficulties of the 30s. And in many ways, the sort of social issues that he was looking at, the political fractures he was looking at that time, have by now, some 80 or 90 years later, reduplicated themselves. In many ways, it feels more like the 30s than it does like the 60s or the aughts.